Hey guys, I'm here to do a book review on Jodi Picoult's The Pact. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I would give it more. I absolutely love this book. I could not put this book down. And I mean, there were some points that were to me like I couldn't believe it, or it was just like too much for me to absorb right then. So I did have to put it down and walk away. And come back to it. I always had to come back to it. This book, for those of you that do not know, it is about a suicide pact between two teenagers. And wow. I was kind of hesitant going into this book at first because I seen a lot of reviews on Jodi Picoult's books, just different ones, and people commenting on the way that she wrote. They really didn't like it. They liked the idea of her stories, but they couldn't get into the way she wrote. So I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. And I actually got 4 other Jodi Picoult books to read. And this is all before I started hearing other reviews. But if her other books are anything like The Pact is, I'm going to love them. Yes, this book is just phenomenal. I love it. I actually did I did a review on it on Goodreads, and I just transferred that same review over to my blog. I do better at writing things down than I do at actually talking because I get so caught up in the moment I stumble over words and that. I did take some notes on it too. This book, it's about love. It's about obviously suicide. It's about sacrifice. It's about tragedy. It's about how something like that, tragedy affects people differently. And also, it pushes people apart, but it also brings people together. It's just an awesome book. Excuse me. It starts off where it's Emily and Chris. They're the 2 teenagers, and they grew up with each other. Their parents were best friends, or ended up being best friends because they moved in next to each other. Chris was already born, and Emily's mom was pregnant with her. And they're 3 months apart. So from day one, they were inseparable. They did everything together because their parents were always together. And everyone always expected that they would end up, being romantically involved. And when they turned, I think it was Chris was 15, so Emily was just shy of 15, or it was 13. I think it was 13. They became romantically involved. And, of course, the parents were all for it because that's what they wanted. Chris was very bright. He was very athletic on the swim team, and Emily was very artistic and also very smart, and the parents supported everything they did, but also it's kind of like they had high standards for them because they knew they could do it. And one thing that happened in this book that it only kind of touched upon, and I'm still, after reading the whole story, not sure if it actually happened or if it's like a nightmare that Emily had. But her and Chris used to dare each other to do things, and he dared her one time when she was 9 to go into the men's McDonald's bathroom, and she did. And there was a guy in there, and he came, and supposedly he put his hand down her pants, pinned her up against the door, and it talked about it very briefly, and then that was it. I know through the rest of the story, though, when Chris tried to get intimate with Emily, Emily would only let him go so far, and then she'd push him away. It made it sound that it was more so because since they were so close, even though she loved him, she still thought of him sometimes as a brother, and she just felt that was incestuous and just couldn't do it, even though they were boyfriend and girlfriend. So I don't know if part of it also had to do with what happened at McDonald's, or like I said, if McDonald's was just a nightmare, because they really don't talk about it except for that. So anyways, this book goes back and forth between now and then. So now, obviously, the present, and then the months leading up to the suicide. The suicide, Emily is the one that ends up dying, and Chris is the one that ends up surviving. And throughout the whole book, you're under the impression, or I don't even want to say under the impression because it's what happened. They made a suicide pact. And Emily succeeded, and Chris didn't. I don't even know if he passed out. So, and that's where the story kind of has, where you're not sure what happened. I mean, you hear the story, like I said, leading up to the suicide, and Chris's feelings for Emily. He totally loves her, would do anything for her, anything. And Emily loves Chris, but she's conflicted, because, like I said, because of the feeling like a brother thing. And then something happens to her, and I think that, or I know that what happens to her is what pushes her into such a depression that she feels like suicide is the only way out. I don't want to give away what happened to her. And she turns to Chris for help. Now, I find that kind of like, wow, because how could you ask somebody that is so in love with you to be there when you kill yourself? I don't know, maybe people do. I don't know, I just can't see it. And Chris, of course, tries to talk her out of it and realizes that he just can't talk her out of it. He threatened at first to go and tell a parent, but she begged him not to, and he agreed not to. And he thought that he can handle it on his own. He thought that he would be able to get her, stop her before it actually came down to it. And so all the thens is all of that leading up to the night of the suicide. The now is when they find Emily. The police first rule it as a suicide, but then after looking into things and that, they arrest Chris because Chris was at the scene, and they charge Chris with murder in the first degree. So Chris actually goes to jail, and he's on trial for the murder of Emily. And so, of course, they're trying to get him off. Of course, his lawyer and that. Ever since he got arrested, his mom and Emily's mom, who were best of friends, no longer talk. Emily's mom cannot stand the family now because she believes that Chris killed her daughter. And so it drives such a big rift between the two families. And they live next door to each other. And Chris's dad was raised that if you ignore the problem, it will go away. So he doesn't even accept that Chris is in jail. He just kind of goes on with his life and kind of tries to push that out of his mind, which is a huge thing, obviously, with your child in jail. The mom, Chris's mom, is so devoted, and of course a mom, she would do anything for Chris. So she's there all the time visiting him and talking to the lawyer, and just she would lie on the stand for him. Emily's mom, like I said, cannot stand Chris's family. She's so full of anger and grief and what have you, but of course. And then there is Emily's dad. And Emily's dad, of course, at the beginning was very, very stricken, very, depressed, of course, he lost his daughter. But then he comes to terms with it. And since he grew up with Chris, he knew that Chris couldn't kill his daughter. I mean, Chris was like his own son. And his wife didn't want to talk about it because his wife was so full of anger. Chris's dad didn't want to talk about Chris being in jail. So what happened was Emily's dad went to go visit Chris at the jail a few times, and one of the times he ran into Chris's mom, and they started talking, and then they started meeting each other weekly because they were the only two that they could talk to each other about what was going on because their spouses didn't want to talk about it. And that almost pushed them closer together than they should have been. But, they backed off, knowing that this isn't right. In the end, there's I don't want to say a twist, but something happened in the end that I wasn't expecting. Maybe I was a little bit, because I was kind of wanting to know what exactly happened the night of the suicide. But what happened, the way Chris was judged, like when the jury finally decided, I don't know if I agreed with what they decided. It doesn't seem realistic to me, especially after the facts of what actually happened. Yeah, so I don't know. I went into this review with, like I said, a bunch of notes, and it was almost going to be a spoiler review. But then there's a lot of people that really wanted me to do this review, and I really don't want to spoil it for them. So that's my alarm going off, if you hear that in the background. So yeah, so I don't want to get into too much detail, but yeah, so it was just beautifully written. It made you feel like you were there. I mean, I really felt like, you know, someone was talking to me almost. I loved this book so much. I love the style of the writing. I love the story. I mean, some of the things, like I said, were a little, like I couldn't believe it. Like, didn't seem like that would actually happen. Like somebody would actually do that. Like something that Chris did. It just seemed like, are you kidding me? Like, I still like don't like the way that was, because I can't believe that someone would do that. He did something because he loved Emily so much, and it just doesn't sound right. So I don't know, but you definitely have to read this book, Jodi Picoult, The Pact. Awesome book. Loved it. I didn't want it to end, but yet I wanted it to, because I have short attention span, and I wanted to go on to another book, another Jodi Picoult book, even though that's probably going to be my next thing. But yeah, I couldn't put this book down, guys. Could not put it down. So check that out. 5 out of 5 stars. Thanks. Bye.